of view. So you don't get pretty pictures.
Yes, probably coming up on some of our last questions here.
Okay.
Jim?
As the global economy starts to shrink, and California's economy starts to shrink, and UC start to lose funding for programs with their own facilities, do you think your organization is actually going to start providing more for those to, as they come in, the UCs, and start using up all that time on your telescopes? Do you think that's just going to absorb all that time, basically, so the education part will be essentially erased?
Well, we're private observatories, and we don't have it. We're not beholden to anybody about our time, other than some very limited commitments. So there isn't any external organization that can kind of put the muscle to us for time. We would have to decide that ourselves. And I guess as long as I'm around, which is planned to be 20 or 30 years, we won't let that happen. To be honest about it, I mean, the UC system is huge. They've got lots of money, and they have major observatories, and they've made a decision to spend their resources in a certain way, and that's great. We're not going to let anybody come in and say, hey, your resources belong to us. It doesn't work that way. Those of you who know that particular bit of internet lore. All your base are belong to us. How many know what that one means? There's a few hackers around. Our version is all your photons are belong to us. So no, that wouldn't happen. That wouldn't happen on my watch anyhow. So, and I have the suspicion once we get this program going, there'll be so much science coming out of the non-professional side of it that there's just no way it would go away. The other thing is real big astronomers like really big telescopes, and their idea of a good time is a bigger telescope. And so we're sort of cleaning up by saying, hey, we can redo the little telescope technology in a neat new way and enter a whole new zone of astronomy. And so we're going to have this area to ourselves. So not that trying to be greedy, but just we're taking advantage of an opportunity in if you will, in the market, an empty hole in the market to do science in a neat new way. And so we'll concentrate on that. Yes.
There's a lot of students here, maybe science and engineering students, who have great plans for their futures and might have some great ideas of their own. What strikes me about your background is that you really did some amazing things, and you had some great ideas, and you made them happen. A lot of people have great ideas, but they don't know how to make them happen. What is it about your particular background that allowed you to really do all of this? And what advice would you have, for students today in school, in science and technology?
Well, thank you for the compliment. What is it about my background? My grandfather, who lived with us from the time I was 5 until he died, was 5th grade educated, but 4th generation master carpenter. But he had 5th grade education. He could do math, he could do arithmetic, but he had no concept of what algebra was about. He read the newspaper every day, and he knew everything that was going on in the world. And he was very curious about the world to basically the day he died. He was reading the newspaper that morning. And from the time I was 4 or so, I was building things, and built a little telegraph out of cut-up tin cans and magnet nails and things, and eventually got into building telescopes. And so I had this mentor in the form of my grandfather, who was always there and took the attitude of one could build anything, design anything, and make anything if you thought about it hard enough and studied enough. So his thesis for me, of course, was always go to college, go to college. But that was never really an issue. But I learned absolutely when I was very young that You can do anything. You just build it. You just think about it, understand it, and do it. Now, there's usually this minor problem of where's the money that often gets in the way. But when I essentially was not even finished with college, I got a job at another university and working on a solar physics experiment. They needed a computer, but they didn't have the capital budget, but they had a parts budget. And they proposed how could they, could we get a computer? And I said, well, why don't we just design one? And everybody was like, oh, we can't do that. And so I explained why we could, and Henry Hill, my boss at the time, said, okay. And you've got 1 year. That's when we need it. So I worked for 1 year, and we designed a computer, wrote an operating system, a Fortran compiler, an assembler, the whole thing, basically by myself. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year. It was a total, absolute commitment kind of project. And it worked. So at age 20, I really tasted sin in that project, and ever since then, I've never had any fear of doing anything in terms of projects. You just organize yourself and do it. So, and never seek permission.
I'm so glad to hear that, as my dean will attest to.
Because to ask permission is to seek denial. Now, when you're spending money and somebody else's money, there is a little bit of a transaction that has to go on. But you just gotta develop the artistic sense of understanding physics and the limits of what is really doable. I mean, you can actually really mess up with this particular attitude if you try for something that's truly impossible or just completely unrealistic. One person can do maybe the work of 2.5 people for a year if they're absolutely working alone and very focused and have a goal. But one person can't do the work of 10 people in a year. Not possible. There might be somebody smarter who can do it a different way. But there's a limit to what any one human being can do. There's a limit to any one system of people working together can do. So.
Okay. Well, we would like to thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Wayne has a little bit of time if you'd like to discuss things with him one-on-one for 10 or 15 minutes after we're finished here. But I think we're going to wrap it up, and we'd like to thank the Scheinfeld Center for sponsoring us, and also the clubs that were involved: the Astronomy Club, the Mesa Club, the Ship Club, and the student leaders in Science Club. We appreciate all of your input, and especially you, Wayne, for coming and joining us this afternoon. Thank you very, very much for doing that.